Welcome back to the Weekend Report. I'm Masachaba Mposwa. Parliament's ad hoc committee looking into allegations by KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi has appointed its evidence leader. Senior Council Norman Arendse will be assisted by two other advocates. Mkhwanazi stunned the nation in July when he claimed there was interference in the handling of political killings in the province and that over 100 case dockets were removed and stalled. The committee has announced it will interview 7 witnesses. It has until the end of October to conclude its work and file its report. All right, so let's discuss this now with the crime researcher and UNISA lecturer, Thabang Bogopa. Thabang, good morning. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika.
Good morning, Ms. Chawa, and good morning to the viewers.
Thanks for joining us. Firstly, what are your thoughts on the appointment of Norman Arendse, SC, as the evidence leader for the parliamentary committee?
My view, firstly, let me just be positive that we hope that Norman will bring perhaps the right direction to that portfolio committee, but also will be neutral. However, let me specify that there's more politics into all this than actual criminology or crime to be analyzed. You'll understand that if the advocate is going there already having a mandate to say this is the direction of which you'll go, then we are likely not going to see any improvement out of the whole process.
Now, from your research perspective, what does the establishment of these investigations tell us about the current state of confidence in our criminal justice institutions?
Maschaba, to be honest, you'll remember that the presidency has taken control of the intelligence arm of the Chapter 11 institutions, both the intelligence and the state security agency. They are reporting directly to the presidency. Tacitly, it means that we were not supposed to even be where we are. They were supposed to have picked all this, they were supposed to have reported it to the president, and it was supposed to have been dealt with discreetly. But now, the hole is getting bigger, and more water is now starting to sink our ship as a nation. And perhaps with the involvement of other parties, particularly the opposition parties, we might see some level of truth emerging. And then we expect that from parliament level, they may be able to execute certain changes. And one of the changes that we expect is them to now decentralize again or separate the intelligence from the presidency so that the state security and the National Intelligence Agency may enjoy their independence and only get to report to the portfolio committee of policing and the presidency, other than reporting day to day, but you still see a lot of inconveniences happening in the country.
So, Thabang, at the end of this process, what kind of report will Arendse produce for the committee? Do you think that it will include recommendations for action or just findings of fact?
It is likely going to have certain recommendations, and I do appreciate the fact that in that committee that is whereby the chairperson is Mulopil Khanyan, we are seeing a lot of independent political thinkers there, which means that the narrative is going to be of a directive, but also a catapulting nature, in the sense that some of the people like Julius Malema are in that committee. You'll understand that since, well, we've seen Julius Malema, how he's been in the Judicial Services Commission, whereby they were interviewing judges. You'd see that he really shaped how processes are going that side. We really do expect this one also to have such catapulting recommendations. But we plead, particularly to the presidency, that let them implement, or to the 2/3 majority of parliament, let them fast track the recommendations of this committee once they are being submitted by the advocate.
All right, now 7 witnesses have been invited to appear before the parliamentary committee. What challenges do you foresee in coordinating witness testimony between the two processes, the Nhlanhla Commission and the ad hoc committee?
Indeed, it's going to be a challenge. You have seen Mkhwanazi is allegedly saying that he's not going to account to this one, the parliament one. of the politicians, because you know he supposedly says, I don't necessarily report to politicians. So you are going to find, let's say, for example, witnesses might be summoned at parallel dates. If you look at the scope, the time when Mkhwanazi is expected on the other, parliamentary committee and versus the judicial commission, they will need to have to sit to say, we need this witness for the whole of September. You can start with this witness in October. And now there's going to be the overlapping mandate. You know, in courts in South Africa, there's that thing to say, which court take precedence? Let's say someone is supposed to appear in High Court in Johannesburg and High Court in Pietermaritzburg at similar dates. Which court must now take precedence? And if it's the same level, now you cannot have an obvious priority. But if it was a lower court and a higher court, we'd know that we have to trust the higher court and later be rescheduled for the lower court. Now, it is going to be a challenging debacle whereby one witness might give more respect or more honor to either the judicial committee than the parliamentary committee, or also having conflicting evidence. Someone might go and say ABC in the portfolio committee, but then CBA in the judicial commission. Now, you are still also going to see cross-reference of the two. One will say, but in that committee you said this. Why are you today now saying the other one? Remember, evidence depends on who's leading it and what are being probed, the probing questions that are being posed on the witness. So it's going to be very challenging, but we hope that there will be political maturity in terms of overcoming the process. And because now, if you look, the mandate of the parliamentary committee, it's brief and short. We could actually expect that the parliamentary committee must conclude its work and then the rest of the work go to the Madanga. Because to be honest, Madanga Judicial Commission, it's very broad. It includes the NPA, the SAPS, all the metros, all the provinces of the SAPS, and all the provinces and centers of the correctional centers. That's very broad. The timelines that were set by the presidents will not be met.
Now, from an international comparative perspective, how would you say other democracies handle situations where senior law enforcement officials make allegations of systemic corruption? Are we following best practice, or are there lessons we should be learning?
I would say South Africa is leading in terms of democracy. In other states or in other countries, it would have not even be entertained unless in the African countries whereby you see the likes of Traore taking in their own direction. But we appreciate the democratic processes in South Africa to say, regardless of the allegations, let's come and investigate them properly. The only challenge is that, like any other state, they are going to be handled or processed in such a way that, number one, they don't implicate the ones who are currently in power. Like you see the issue of Senzo Mkhunu. Senzo Mkhunu is bringing the largest voter subset. And that is an issue that is at play. All these other things would not, if it was just a minister who did not have followers, action would have been long taken. You've seen what happened to the Minister of the Higher Education for just smaller things. The only issue here is that the people who are involved are the people who come with the greatest voter subset population in South Africa. Now, that is the greatest challenge to even the president who emerges or comes from a minority voting population.
Thabang, there have been ongoing calls for former Minister Bheki Cele to also be called. What are your thoughts on this?
No, it's given. Remember, Bheki Cele has been involved in some of these debacles, several of them, whether for good or for bad, but he's been involved. So he has to be called, he must come and testify to say, to what extent are you involved? To what extent were some of these challenges handed over from your leadership to the new leadership? Some of these challenges were honestly inherited and not new. Some of them were well managed during Cele's period, but they existed. Now you may find that perhaps the new policy minister failed to maintain some of the wrongdoing. You know, sometimes there's wrongdoing that happens in the country, but it's managed so well that it does not disturb stability. Remember, another thing, Master Chaba, that we must look at, we need not to compromise the stability of the country. in so much that we want to, you can look at what happened when the former head of state Zuma was arrested. We need to maintain law and order in the country while dealing with individual matters. We need not allow individual matters to come and destabilize the whole peace in South Africa. What we don't want.
Now, looking beyond the immediate political drama, if these investigations establish that the allegations do have merit, what does this mean for other senior officials who might be aware of similar problems but have not spoken out? Could this encourage more whistleblowing, or might it have a chilling effect?
Actually, it creates a safer space for public disclosures to emerge or for whistleblowers. And that's what we appreciate. Although it might risk the safety of other witnesses, especially key witnesses, but we also hope that it will also revitalize the witness protection in the country, because we know that witness protection has been compromised permanently in this country.
And how binding are the evidence leader's conclusions on the parliamentary committee? Can MPs ignore his legal assessments when they write their final report?
In terms of binding, remember, a lot of the recommendations, for them to be passed by Parliament, they might still need a majority vote. So in the GNU, and the sad part is this, in the GNU, there's vultures like the Democratic Alliance. They are going to just watch, and once the recommendations are there, once they see that most of the recommendations are implicating African National Congress deployees, they are going to call the president and say, hey, come here. This is the situation. For us to support this, we need this. For us to move with you or to vote against or in support, we need this. And now, that's the challenge of politics, to say, in so much that we are looking at is hoping that it will revive justice in the country. There's those who want to use this also to play into 2026 and 2029 local and national elections. So that is the unfortunate part. The recommendations must be there, but if a majority of the voters or of parliament does not agree to certain recommendations, we are going to see minimal effect. But if a majority then get to say, actually what's going to happen much is going to be handpicking or hand. What does Thabang doesn't enjoy hitting? Okay, this one is having so much support in demographic. Let's just be mild about it. Actually, in diplomacy role outside, when diplomats 5 years when this has decided. So those are politics of South Africa. You must expect them.